the speakers. Mr. Abramovsky is the Minister of Environment of Ukraine, Chloe Alio, Head of the Department of Cooperation in the Sphere of Economy, Infrastructure and Environment of the Representation of the European Union in Ukraine, Mikhailo Khorev, Deputy Minister of the Ministry of Environment of Ukraine, Yaroslav Slobodnik, who represents the Institute of Environment of Slovakia Republic. And that was the institute that was doing laboratory testing of the samples of water taken in Ukraine. Alexander Tsinke is the project leader of the group of experts of the project of Water Initiative Plus for the countries of the Eastern Partnership. And I would like to present myself. I'm going to moderate. I am Oksana Konovalenko, a representative of Ukrainian side of the project of Water Initiative Plus. Now I invite Mr. Roman Abramovsky, the Minister of Environment, to start our today's event. Thank you. First of all, I want to thank the project of water initiative that was initiated by European Union and I would like to thank Ms. Chloe, and we're extremely pleased that in all the initiatives, European Union is helping us with implementation of such projects. We implemented the Water Directive of European Union and according to the Association Agreement of Ukraine and European Union, these are already the technical steps that are taken in order to implement this water initiative in Ukraine, or water directive in Ukraine. So what do we have to do? First of all, we have to conduct the screening of chemical substances, chemical analysis of the basin of our rivers in order to understand what chemicals should be monitored and what should we work with, what are the sources of pollution that we have to determine during this 2-year monitoring of the water basins. And after that, we will develop the plan of management of the water basins and to work efficiently in order to supply high quality water according to the framework water directive of European Union. What has been done during this screening? So the samples of water were taken during that screening and of biota in order to determine chemical composition and pollutants that are present today in the basins of our rivers. I talk about Dniester, Don, and today we are talking about the basin of Dnipro River. That is the largest river in Ukraine, 290,000 kilometers. This is the square meters of Dnipro River, and nearly 50% of Ukraine are using the water from the Dnieper River. And Dnieper, of course, contains a lot of pollutants and brings them to the Black Sea. So this work that was very important gives us understanding what should we monitor, what should we work at, and the sources of pollution, of what substances has to be determined in order to efficiently manage that and to decrease the pollution of Dnieper River. I would also like to say that during the screening, just some important points that I would like to underline. We detected not only ordinary pollutants, but there was the targeted screening conducted on 2,000 pollutants and compounds, and not targeted screening of nearly 65,000 different compounds. And during that screening, we determined that serious pollution can be seen from pharmaceuticals and the reminders of that pollutants. And during coronavirus pandemic, pharmaceuticals get into the water according to COVID protocol that is applied during treatment of the patients sick with COVID-19. And there's compounds of heavy metals like zinc and copper and others. The experts are going to talk in more details about it, including my deputy. And I would like to pass the floor to Chloe Alio, and I hope moderator will give her the floor. Chloe, are you in our Zoom meeting also? Chloe, are you
Yes,
there?
Thank you very much, dear Minister. Dear colleagues and partners, I am very grateful today for the initiative of our Ukrainian partners, the Ministry of Environmental Protection and the Water Resource Management Agency to organize this event. The public awareness about the state of the rivers and other natural waters in Ukraine is very important, as the Minister just highlighted, and it mobilizes the support to the environmental agenda in the society and at political level. As you know, water is crucial for climate regulation, for the ecosystems and the functioning of and for human health. And our economic development is very dependent on water. And in the European Union, the water policies are among the main building blocks of the European Green Deal. The issue transcends the national boundary, and in the EU, we need concerted action at the level of the EU, but also close cooperation with our neighbors, and this is very important to ensure an effective protection. With the EU Water Framework Directive, which is a central piece of our environmental legislation in the EU, the aim has not only been to get Europe's waters cleaner, but also getting our citizens involved. And the Water Framework Directive and the river basin management plans have significantly improved the water management across the European Union. And this has also generated very important efforts across our member states to reduce the sources of pollution from agriculture, from industry, and from households. I trust that the support of the EU and of the EU member states will enable the government and all stakeholders in Ukraine to follow the provision of the Water Framework Directive through stronger national health and environmental policies. Since 2016, the EU Water Initiative Plus has supported 6 Eastern Partnership countries, including Ukraine, to align their water management with European Union policies and practices. Today, the pollutant screening carried out in the Dnipro River Basin is one of the EU-funded activities in Ukraine that helps the country to move closer to compliance with EU water quality monitoring standards. The new precise field and laboratory data enables decision makers to implement targeted measures that will help to increase protection of people's health and to increase the environmental protection in Ukraine. In addition, the EU Water Initiative Plus initiatives has supplied new laboratory equipment and has trained experts of the Northern Region Water Laboratory. But of course, our cooperation between EU and Ukraine does not stop here. As you may have heard a few days ago, on the 10th of February, the Prime Minister and the Vice President of the European Commission, Mr. Timmermans, have launched a focused dialogue on Ukraine's green transition and on the European Green Deal after a decision taken during the last summit in October 2020. And Ukraine has confirmed its interest in pursuing its green transition endeavor, and the EU has committed to support this transition. And of course, to deliver under the green transition, accelerated progress in the implementation of Ukraine's commitment under the association agreement is very important, and environment has been the top priority of our cooperation with Ukraine for many years, and it also represents an important area of the association agreement. So this is indeed a cornerstone of good environmental governance and a prerequisite for creation of a sound civil society by giving a consultative role to the citizens. And therefore, we attach great importance to implementation of Chapter 6 on environment and Annex 30 of the association agreement. And Ukraine has committed to implement 6 EU directives in the water sector, but also national water legislation has improved over the last years. The implementation remains challenging, and a lot of efforts still need to be done. In particular, the EU Water Framework Directive, which takes a pioneering approach to protect water based on natural geographic formations, river basins, and in accordance with Annex 30, Schedule 9 river basin management plans for designated river basin districts should be developed and adopted by CABMIN by November 2024. And the EU Water Initiative Plus project has already made a substantial contribution in moving this process ahead in Ukraine. The EU will continue to support Ukraine and other Eastern Partnership countries in carrying out the water sector reform agenda for the benefit of people and for the benefit of the environment, in particular through the next stage of the EU Water Initiative program. At this point, I would like to thank you all, and thank all the partners involved in the work related to improving the water quality in Ukraine. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Chloe. Now I pass the floor to the Deputy Minister of the Ministry of Environment and Natural Resources of Ukraine, who is heading the direction of the water resources. This is Mr. Mikhailo Khoriev. So the floor is yours. Thank you very much. As it has been already mentioned by the minister, essential work was conducted on implementation of the water directive into our legislation. And this is very good that the projects were helping us a lot, because we started from the scratch. We didn't have any laboratory basis, and only now we acquired this opportunity to monitor the substances that are monitored in the European Union. This is why in the 2018 and 19 the OECD and Global Environment Fund aid was given, and we conducted the screening of Don River Basin and Dniester River Basin, and finally we came to the largest basin we have. It's the river basin of Dnipro, and this is very good that we didn't lose time, because if we would develop our own laboratory basis and then conduct the screening, we would lose several more years in order to pass to the monitoring itself. But at present, we have quite an essential territory part that is covered by the screening, and starting from 2021, the minister signed the program of monitoring for the whole territory of Ukraine that includes already the results that have been already detected. Why the screening is so important? Why do we talk about it? Because in the European Union, water framework, water directive says that the monitoring should be conducted of 45 specific pollutant substances. And this is not the final list, because 45, this is mandatory for every water source, but there are specific substances that could be typical for the specific territories, because there could be some industrial sites or other sources of pollution or agricultural production. And this is why this requires additional studies and to detect whether there are other pollutant substances that maybe should be added to this list of 45 mandatory pollutants. So on the results of the screening that we conducted with the help of our partners from the European Union and with the help of the projects, we talking about Don Basin, we added plus 17 polluting substances. To Dniester, we added 18 more pollutants. And in the Dnipro River, plus 21 pollutant. They are similar, and they are grouped by different substances. Everywhere we find heavy metals, and practically everywhere we see growth of concentration of pesticides and agrochemicals. And this says that they are not correctly stored and maybe not used according to the technology. So the detailed monitoring was not yet conducted, but anyways, the results help us to pass this data to the state environmental inspection, and the minister already is working, gave the order to work on that subject. So inspection already has materials in order to search where these pollutant substances are coming from. The same, we pass the results of the screening to our water channels. This is important for them. They should understand that there are certain polluting substances in the water that maybe they were not monitoring, like here water channel said that they know that the situation is such, and Japanese are helping them. And so they are taking care of that. But other water channels like Belotserki water channel, because in the city of Bila Tserkov, that was absolutely new for them, and they've never heard that they exist in nature, about these plastificators and other substances, and that the water contains pharmaceuticals. In fact, nobody was talking about that beforehand, and now we come to absolutely new level of the monitoring and to the new level of screening. So we have to understand that screening cannot cover all the territory of Ukraine. Even the whole basin is not covered. Not all the points are covered there. And this is not the task of the screening. The task of the screening is to select several points in order to have representative information about the risk points. So we do not monitor areas with clean water without any risks of pollution. And on the contrary, we have to select the points that from the standpoint of the experts can be the most polluted. And the screening is conducted there in order to detect the substances that exist in the water. And again, what Mr. Minister was saying, targeted and non-targeted screening of the substances. We found so many different substances, like in Dniester River. We found 108 additional substances, but they are not augmenting the allowed levels sometimes. And this is why the directive and European Union, they are saying that you have to monitor only those that can bring to negative substances that augment the levels, the allowed levels. And if you find hundreds of substances and we see the results 17, 18, 21, this is not too many. But from one side, uh, but from another side, this is quite an expensive monitoring, and this is very good that we had an opportunity to conduct it, because this was the first step or the Rubicon before we pass to development of the plan of actions and management of the water basins, because we have to understand whether this water source is sick or is in the good health, and we need to conduct analysis that lasts for several years, and we have to cover more points, not 27, but more than 400. And in the future, this list will grow, and we will try to cover not less than 10% of all the water basins. And we have 9,000 in our country. So Ukraine puts quite an ambitious goal of 10%, and France monitors 50%. They do not cover more. And so if we take 10%, that would be good. I would like to add to what Ms. Chloe was saying about the legislative basis that we develop in Ukraine, and also the network of laboratories is helping us a lot. And in the future, we will develop this network of laboratories, and we want to place them in Slavyansk, in Vizhgorod, in Odessa, and we will be able to monitor the condition of our water sources independently. And we've already trained the experts, and the laboratory equipment is already installed there. So from the next year, we will be able to do this monitoring ourselves of the water sources in Ukraine. And what is also interesting, conditionally interesting, that during screening, for example, talking about pesticides and chemicals, agrochemicals, we saw that the traces of agrochemicals that were applied in 1960s, and they were protected already in the Soviet Union in that time. So it means they were wrongly stored, and maybe they are still using that pollutants. So this is also going to be the subject of the work of or investigation of the environmental inspection, where these compounds get from into our water. Thank you very much. This is really about the results that is the subject of discussion for scientific experts and for those who are taking care of the environment and manage water basins. Now I would like to pass the floor to Yaroslav Slobodnik, who is the director of the Slovakia Institute of Environmental Protection, and who this is the institute that was directly working with our Dnipro and Don River and Dniester River. And they did a lot themselves. So we would like to hear his expert opinion. Uh, Yaroslav, please, the floor is yours. I invite you to start your presentation. Yaroslav? Okay, I just try to share the screen.
Видно что-то на экране?
Not yet. We see just white screen.
Окей, хорошо. Попробуем еще раз. А сейчас?
It's all right now. We see the presentation.
Окей. Я бы хотел сказать
I would like to say about the technical details of our monitoring. The main goal was to see in the very beginning the priority pollutants according to the framework water directive, but we would like to find out if we can find something special for Ukraine, something specific, like specific pollutants for Dnipro River Basin. And we would like to install the basic line of the chemical pollution in the basin. And for that, we applied the most contemporary methodologies in the world scale that are known to us. So we studied more than 220 pollutants in every sample, where we could see exactly what is the concentration of every one of that pollutant, if it can be found. And besides, we looked at more than 65,000 pollutants and the products of their desegregation. And we wanted to see whether they exist in these samples or not. So we conducted that in October 2020. We selected samples from 27 sampling sites. And we got 27 samples of the surface waters, and in 5 points we took some samples of fish, of biota. Selection of the samples was conducted with in the cooperation with the experts of Ukrainian National Center on Ecology of Seas in Odessa and the Institute of Hydrobiology of Ukrainian Academy of Sciences were also participating. What did we find out in that samples? Concerning metals, we were looking at 8 different metals. 4 of them should be mandatory checked according to the framework directive, and we included 4 more into this list because other European countries are checking that metals in their rivers, like Danube River, for example. And out of all that, we made such a conclusion. So maybe that would be good to have closer studies of zinc and copper and to include them into the list of the specific pollutants of the Dnipro River Basin, because they, on many sites, they were higher than the threshold concentrations of toxicity. We were afraid that we can find mercury everywhere. This is a very big problem for Europe, but luckily for Ukraine, we found it only in one sample. And unfortunately, that was the fish, the biota sample from the place where Kiev is getting its potable water. Concerning the fish, we also were looking at the specific pollutants that should be monitored according to the legislation, like dioxins. Maybe everyone heard about very toxic dioxins that can also kill people. And you can see this at this right top chart. This is the red line that is showing the uh, uh, threshold of toxicity, and all concentrations were lower. What does that mean? We were afraid that it can happen the same way as in the Black Sea when dioxins will be present in many samples, but this is not right. And when we look at the price of one test, it can be $600 and $700 per one sample. And imagine if you would have 100 points of sample taking for only one parameter, you will lose $700,000. And on the basis of that, maybe if you are not rich enough, we should start with something different, not dioxins, but the situation is a little bit different with bromides, with antiparents that exists everywhere, and even in the blood of our children. This is in every product that surrounds us, and this was found in fish, this red columns that are shown on the bottom chart. Talking about surface waters, we've been looking at more than 2,000 pollutants, and this has been mentioned several times. Luckily, we don't see all that pollutants in all the samples, but we found 161, uh, at least in one of the samples. This is quite a lot as well. And we should say that some of the points or where we've been taking the tests are polluted less than others or more than others. And you can see that, for example, water, sewage waters from the Kiev water channel close to Bela Tserkav, Korsun-Shevchenkovsky, and Bela Tserkivska, close to Chernigiv. So we found that pollutants in quite high concentrations. It can be expected when it is not far away from purification installations. But if these installations are working well, situation cannot be that bad for the water that is situated in several kilometers from that purification installations. Also, pesticides were found quite high concentrations. Here you can see 60 nanograms for terbutalazine. This is herbicide. And this is the threshold of toxicity. If these pesticides get into the water, then biota is dying. It can be flora or fauna. And here concentration that we found is 40,000, 60 to 40,000, 9, 3,000, 0, 190 nanograms. You can make your own conclusion. Something goes wrong here. And we've seen it only once, but in every country of Europe, everyone would have very close look at what is going on about it. So you can see here the names of the chemicals that you've never seen before, but these are herbicides, nicosulfuron and terbutalazine. This is not a surprise. It is also used in other countries. Fipronil, this is an insecticide. I don't know if you remember, several years ago, that was a huge scandal about this fipronil found in the eggs in the European countries. And that was a huge scandal that really shocked all egg-producing industries of the European Union. Several pollutants were found nearly everywhere. For example, carbamazepine. This is antidepressant product. Ukraine does not differ from others. It does not mean that you have more people in depression than in other countries. We find this compound in other countries. This is not a surprise, but it was interesting to find lopinavir. This is a drug that is used against COVID-19. This is antiretroviral drug, and we found it in more than 50% of the samples. Fluconazole and diclofenac, also the drugs that everyone is applying, and this is not a very big surprise as well. We can compare that to other countries of European Union. On the basis of that, we took such a method, we adopted such a methodology, not to talk about how many pollutants, 100, 1000. We just wanted to make this little list little bit shorter, not to correct it. So the criteria of choice, if we find the compounds at more than 10% of places or spots, then this is important. And if the toxicity level is high at one place, so we found altogether 519 specific 19 pollutants of the basin of the Dnipro River, and out of that 99 pesticides, 9 pharmaceuticals, and 1 galaxolidol is a fragrance. This is not a surprise. Galaxolidon also is found in other countries, but it means that every polluting substance has its history. And I would say that that would be very logical to have a look at their concentrations in the large scale of the large national monitoring. Interesting part, when we've been studying the production of the drinking water, we had 4 points where we took the samples. It's Desna River, close to Kiev, then Slach River, Kremenchuk Reservoir, and Kamora River. And we've been studying other issues, not toxicity for fauna and flora living in that rivers, but at that magical threshold of 0.1 microgram per liter. This is linked with the human consumption and health. And everywhere in Europe, if any compound that is found that is higher than this limit, than the threshold, this is also important, already important for the production of the potable water. And especially if this is about pesticides, it is according to the law, to the framework directive about potable water of European Union. You have to do something about it. And unfortunately, in 2 of that 4 points, we found also pesticides that were more than 0.1 microgram per liter. In the end, we've been looking at that 65,000 plus compounds in every test, and I am happy to tell you that we didn't find too much, but still we found 440 compounds, at least in one sample. And again, we would like to talk about those that can be managed, and we created the list of several of them. So these are 5 compounds on the basis of this toxicity threshold for all that 65,000 of pollutants. And if the content was higher, at least at one point, then we are going to study that compound, and if that compound was found at more than 50% of the samples, so we can see here from 0.5 to 0.8, it means they were found nearly everywhere. And we also had a look at the databases of European Environmental Agency in Helsinki. So if something is more than 0.5 there, it means that this is production of very big quantities in Europe, more than 100,000 of tons, and this is quite expected to be found in Ukraine. But 013, 015, 017, it means that these are specific pollutants from the industries of Ukraine, and I would give you an advice to study who is producing that, and maybe something can be done with it in the bilateral discussions with those who produce that pollutants. So what are we coming to? When you know that names of that compounds, that they are toxic, that they are everywhere, then you can implement the principle of European Union. Those who pollute, they have to pay. And in the conclusions, I would like to say that we found 21 specific polluting substances of the Dnipro River basin, 2 heavy metals, and 19 organic substances, polluting substances. We found several specific points. We found several compounds that really augmented largely the threshold of toxicity. And we would also like you to pay attention to that compounds that are in the water reservoirs from which they take the drinking water. I know that this is just a first step, that this is quite a good step. And in Danube, by the way, on the basis of such studies that I am showing you now, such monitoring is done once in 6 years, and everything we find there, all the data go to the plan of the Danube Basin River Management. So we have 14 countries, Ukraine included there. And so what does it mean? For every that compound at the national level, the threshold limits of toxicity should be developed, and the scheme of monitoring should be conducted at least 4 times a year to have a look whether they can be found, what are the trends, the tendencies, and is it going to confirm what we found on our survey monitoring. And this, of course, costs money. And the equipment that Ukraine received now within the framework of our project, this is EUWI plus. This is just the beginning to give you opportunity to measure all the parameters that are presented now at the screen. You need 1 more million on 1.5 million euros in order to buy all the equipment. And when we know the thresholds of toxicity, you have to develop the action plan. Now we are talking about the soft investments, several million euros or hundreds of thousands of euros, in order just to have a picture received, to see what is going on in Ukraine. But these programs and actions are taken. But why the pharmaceuticals are getting into water? Because purification systems are not working correctly. And in order to improve their work within the scale of the country, we conducted a project in Sava River, 9 billion euro is where you went for that project. So if you try to scale it on Ukraine, that would be several dozens of billions of euros. And in order to implement that money in the correct, to use that money in the good way, you need to know the realistic situation, and you have to concentrate all the experts and all the equipment and the training. And then in the end, databases. Without that databases, no government can take any decisions. So this gives you the general picture of what is going on in Ukraine within several years. You can see Seversky Donetsk River we did in 2018, then in Dniester 2019, in October we made Dnipro. In 2019, there was a very big action, at Danube River. That was the joint Danube survey, and all 14 countries were cooperating within the program that was using the same methodologies as we applied now on Dnipro basin. And from 2014 to 2020, there was the MPLUS program in European Union, where we see how all these pollutants go to the Black Sea. And Black Sea is now reviving, and what we see in the Ukrainian rivers now can destroy that very fragile equilibrium. Ukraine now is one of the leading countries of the world when it goes about monitoring of chemical pollutants. And you can see the map that we've been showing in the end of 2020 during our meeting of the Norman project. And where you see that points, it means that red or yellow points, it means that we have a lot of data in that areas. And now they are in the databases of Norman. You can come back to the data without going to the river and taking new samples and doing new measurements. You just can do the retrospective analysis of what is going on. And Mr. Horev was asking me several times, what is more polluted, Seversky Donetsk, Dnipro, or Dnipro? My colleagues made such a comparative chart. So you see, Seversky Donetsk, Dnipro, and Dnipro, we've chosen 3 most polluted points in that basins, and we made cumulative concentrations of all polluting substances that were found. Of course, this is not very scientifically based, but anyways, this is good to show that this load of polluting substances in the rivers is approximately the same in Dniester and Dnipro. And the blue chart, it's pesticides. We can see that agriculture plays very important role in the pollution of the Dnipro. This red color, it's pharmaceuticals. So problem number 1, it's purification installations. Problem number 2, it's agriculture. And if this will be resolved, then it will resolve more than 80 or 90% of the problem of the general pollution. Thank you very much for attention. Thank you, Yaroslav. We're very grateful to Yaroslav for such a detailed presentation. And now I pass the floor to Alexander Sinke. He is the head of the group of years Water Initiative Plus project. And then we will pass to questions. Alexander, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everybody. Vienna in Austria is speaking. My best regards. I would like to start by stating that Ukraine is one of 6 beneficiary countries of the Eastern Partnership of the European Union. So beside Ukraine, we have Belarus, Moldova, Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan as the countries where this project, the European Water Initiative Plus, is being implemented since 2016, and we are now getting soon to the end of our project. The results that we see today is a new level of knowledge and awareness about pollution in the Dnipro River basin, starting from the border with Belarus and ending in the Black Sea. However, this picture is incomplete. It's a flashlight with very important information about the challenges of water pollution, chemical pollution. But this is a certain moment of the year at 27 sites. So as has been stressed before by Minister Abramovsky and Deputy Minister Koreev, there's a lot more of monitoring needed in the future, and we are very pleased that there's such a strong commitment from the ministry, but also from the State Agency for Water Resources to intensify the monitoring in the future. So many more sites have to be sampled. And beside chemistry, there is also biology, very important for the monitoring. Actually, biology is the topic number one, because the species living in the water, like the water plants, the fish, the small insects, they integrate much more what are the living conditions, what is the ecological quality of the water throughout the year, and not only at a certain moment for certain chemical parameters. So biology has to be intensified in the future. The same applies to monitoring of the groundwater and monitoring of coastal waters. So a lot of subjects, a lot of tasks that are still ahead for further improving the monitoring of waters across the Ukraine. As has been stated also before, this amount of pollution that has been found has to be reduced. And the EU Water Framework Directive has a specific tool, which is called River Basin Management Plan. And this plan has a so-called program of measures. And I can tell you that the plan that is currently being drafted and will soon be submitted to the ministry has a number of measures targeting specifically wastewater treatment from urban sources, but also industrial sources, as well as agricultural sources. With this project and the various activities, we could increase the capacity in Ukraine in river basin management in general and water monitoring more specifically. We have done dozens of trainings. There were many expert meetings. There are dozens of technical reports, guidance documents ready for use by the Ukrainian experts. And we provided a substantial amount of modern equipment for analyzing chemistry and biology in the laboratory in Vyshgorod of the State Water Agency. Secondly, we also have started to much more involve stakeholders that are using the water and that are benefiting from a good water quality. Involving them means that they understand what is the impact of certain uses of water, or you can say misuse of water, and how the reduction, for instance, of pollution, of over-abstraction, can help to contribute to a better water quality. So the involvement of stakeholders will help to ease the work of the water management authorities in Ukraine. The results of our project, not only of this report, but many more results are available on our webpage. At the moment, we have 99 documents only for Ukraine that are explaining what are the subjects to be addressed, how to resolve the problems, and how to further develop in the future for water monitoring, but also other water management challenges. Thank you very much for your attention.
Дуже дякую нашим колегам. Я запрошую
We
до
thank our colleagues very much. Now the discussion begins. The questions are welcomed. Good morning, ICTV TV channel. We have a question to the minister. Today, it was announced that there was impressive results of the water screening. What do you mean by this impressive results of the water screening? That was the way it was announced today. Thank you for the question. First of all, under these impressive results, we understand that our fears were confirmed about the consequences of low efficiency agriculture, because you've seen that majority of polluting substances are in the Dnipro River are pesticides and agrochemicals. We knew about the results, but the public, of course, should know that as well. And why it is really striking, because the Dnipro River is polluted by agrochemicals and pesticides. What is the reason? This is very simple. The river banks are not correctly kept, and also the wrong use of the chemicals and pesticides. We have very large agricultural areas in Ukraine. Bangladesh is taking the first place, and we are taking the third place in the world, talking about our agricultural areas. And majority of that territories of the fields are plowed, and the forests that were planted around they are destroyed, and this is what is really striking. And in the biota samples, we detected the dangerous substances. So the draft law was developed already, that was presented to the president about mercury presence and the use of mercury in agriculture. This is also the result of the studies that we conducted during that screening. This is really striking for us. And of course, the harm to the human beings that was found in that 4 points that Mr. Slobodnik was showing us. This is really striking, surprising, and we offer to organize the meeting of the Association of the Water Channels with the Ministry of Regional Development and other agencies in order to present that results to everyone, to all the stakeholders, and then to offer the plans on implementation of our long-term work on the improvement of our waters and health of our citizens. How are you going to find that industrial enterprises that in order to reduce the level of pollution? You know, there are no secrets about the biggest producers of water, pharmaceuticals enterprises that do that sewages. And this monitoring gives us possibility to see how the level of pollution is changing from point to point. And so studying the data, using the methodologies that already exist, we know how to detect that polluting companies. And is there some mechanism how to compensate that losses? And can you give us any examples when enterprises are paying because they are polluting? We don't have too many examples like that because the methodology was not that efficient. Now we change this methodology. Secondly, it is also linked with the fact that inefficient inspections were conducted, and they were just missing money to organize judicial actions. And also, I don't want to talk about it, but this is also linked with the corruption of different structures. And the task is put forward to renew now the environmental control system, to create transparent mechanism, to renew the managers and to renew methodologies, to put it at the new rails. And now in the parliament, the law is in Register 3091 that changes approach to state environmental control. The fines are essentially enlarged, and this is an important procedure. And they are not allowing inspectors now even to do controls. Today, the sums are very low, and the enterprises that are polluting water or air, they just don't let the inspectors come and conduct their inspections. And they are using the drawbacks of our legislation. But so we want to stop that, but we want to open the access of the public in order to get the materials of that controls. And you can go to the portal where you get all information about that actions and how this decisions of the inspections are implemented into life. If there are no more questions, I want to thank European Union and the delegation and the project for the aid in conducting of this screening. We are counting on prolongation of our cooperation in the efficient manner, and we are very thankful for the essential material aid and for the expert aid that maybe is more important in this area. than material and technical support. Now, this is number one. And number two, I would like to say that all the ministries and agencies are very centered on cooperation with European Union, but in the same time, we are doing our homework. We register many laws and do the amendments to the laws in order to enlarge the fines for pollution, and we hope that that will also stimulate the enterprises to to take their measures in order to reduce pollution in Ukraine. So all that has to be implemented in Ukraine. Thank you. I wanted to ask, we've heard that pharmaceuticals were found in the and the antiretroviral product was found there that is used for COVID-19. Can you comment that? Is there a risk that we can find in our drinking water some products that treat COVID? This is true. You've heard it correctly. And also antidepressants were found, some residues of that, and that medical products that are used in the COVID protocol as well, because they are widely used nowadays. And this is clear that a bigger share of them get into the water. And water channels say, so like we did the control of more than 2,000 indicators, but water channels are controlling only 10 or 20. But we need to get results. So if you enlarge the number of compounds that are controlled by water channels, and there are specific protocols of water purification, and then these pollutants will not get into the water. But is it kind of super dangerous, or is there a new danger? I cannot tell you that because these are just pharmaceuticals. But in general, do we have any obligations before Europe? Is it possible for Europe to control us, for European Union to control us? In the very beginning, I was saying that we implement into Ukraine a water directive of European Union, and of course we took obligations not only implement our domestic measures, but also fulfill European directive. And you can see that we cooperate with European Union and the control is conducted by European Union. So the level of pollution of Ukrainian rivers is studied by European Union and is interpolated at the general picture. So Ukraine is not an isolated country. And what Mr. Slobodnik was saying, for example, Black Sea, where Danube and Dnipro are coming to, this also changes the situation. So together with our partners, we are implementing the water directive of European Union in order to improve the quality of the water in Ukraine. Thank you very much. So this is going to be the final question. I'm greeting everyone. TV channel Sonce, Sun. I want to ask you, if we conclude, can a simple person go to swim in the river and to catch fish there, to fish there? Maybe I would like to pass the floor to my colleagues. You know how I answer this question? Personally, me, I go to swim in the river. I go to the Dnipro River to swim, and I also drink raw water from the tap that Kiev Water Channel is producing. In Odessa, I will not drink water from the tap, but in Kiev, I do that. And the substances that were detected, this is bad that they are there. Not all of them are in the huge concentrations that can really harm you if you drink that water or if you swim in this water. It does not mean that you will get sick and die, but if for a long time you will consume this water, there will be an impact of that substances on your organism, on your system. And this is why this is a one-time screening that was conducted, and then during the whole year we are going to monitor monthly that substances in the points of taking samples. And then when we find that this is very easy to detect who is guilty, because all of that substances are anthropogenic, and this is very easy to see what enterprise produces that pollutants, because all enterprises are different. And of course, certain sanctions will be taken against them. And what Mr. Minister was saying, we're improving that system of not just to increase the fines, but to really stimulate producers. They should very clearly understand that they have to be responsible for that pollution. And I also want to add that we also support preventive measures. And I hope that the managers of enterprises that are polluting water will hear us, and they will review their policies. And we have strong mechanisms in order to control their activities concerning the water objects. And we guarantee that they will be punished. And of course, the managers of that enterprises, they also swim in that waters and they also drink that water. So we invite everyone, and them including, to join our initiatives and to reduce their polluting substances, to improve their purification systems, and to take all necessary measures. But to add that in the parliament, the law 4167 was registered, that is targeted to reduce and control industrial pollution. And one of the novelties is the integrated permit that includes the permit for pollution of the air and water, and also production of the wastes. It was not voted completely from the first time, but many deputies voted for it, and we hope that after several articles that they will improve, we will have this law adopted, and it will be voted for. This is implementation of the 75 Directive of European Union, new approach to the best existing technologies of the world on the basis of the uh, uh, documents. And this is an essential structural reconstruction. And this is the way to implement best European practices. And I hope very much that this law will be adopted. I'm sure in that, and Ukrainian society and Ukrainian people will get opportunity to live in the clear and safe environment. Thank you very much. We thank everyone for your attention, for your active participation. I really want to say that, and I am proud to participate in the project that presents such an information for the country that is using it in the efficient way. Thank you very much. I hope that everyone together we will work to improve the management of water resources and to improve the quality of our water resources. Thank you very much and goodbye.